On August 31, 1985, serial killer Richard Ramirez walked into a convenience store in Los Angeles. At first, he seemed like any ordinary shopper. But then, he noticed his own face on the cover of a newspaper and ran for his life. By that point, Ramirez was already considered as Night Stalker murders that had terrorized California for over a year. But authorities had only just released his name and picture to the public, while he was traveling back to Los Angeles. This gave residents plenty of time to memorize his physical features and point him out to authorities as he dashed out of the store. It also gave Ramirez very little chance to get away, but he still tried to escape. The ensuing chase involved 7 police cars and a helicopter that tracked Ramirez throughout the city. But an angry mob of bystanders caught up to him first. Enraged by his heinous crimes, they began to beat him relentlessly, and at least one man used a metal pipe. By the time the police arrived, Ramirez was practically thanking them for arresting him. Richard Ramirez had started his brutal killing spree a little over a year before his arrest. In that time, he committed countless other violent acts and murdered at least 14 people. But his life of crime started long before that. Born on February 29, 1960, Richard Ramirez was raised in El Paso, Texas. Ramirez claimed that his father physically abused him and that he sustained multiple head injuries at an early age. One injury was so severe that it reportedly caused him to have epileptic seizures. To escape his violent father, Ramirez spent a lot of time with his older cousin, Miguel, who was a Vietnam veteran. Unfortunately, Miguel's influence wasn't that much better than his father's had been. During his time in Vietnam, Miguel had raped, tortured, and even dismembered several Vietnamese women. And sickeningly, he had the photographic evidence to prove it. He often showed Little Richie photos of the horrors he inflicted upon the women. And when Ramirez was just 13 years old, he witnessed his cousin fatally shoot his own wife. From developing an interest in Satanism to becoming addicted to drugs, Ramirez's life took a dark turn. Even worse, he was still under his cousin's influence, since Miguel had been found not guilty of the murder by reason of insanity. Before long, Ramirez developed an obsession with the same kinds of sexual and physical violence that Miguel had inflicted on the women in his photos. Though most of his early crimes in the late 1970s and early 1980s were related to theft and drug possession, it would only be a matter of time before they escalated to unspeakable violence. It was then that he killed 79-year-old Jenny Vincow. Not only did Ramirez stab and sexually assault his victim, he also slashed her throat so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. But decades after Ramirez was arrested in 1985, he was also linked by DNA evidence to the murder of a 9-year-old girl, which took place on April 10, 1984. Months before the Vincow murder. On March 17, 1985, an assault on Maria Hernandez has happened in her home as the beginning of Ramirez's murder spree. Though Hernandez managed to escape, her roommate Dale Okazaki was not so lucky. That evening, Okazaki became another one of Ramirez's murder victims. But Ramirez still wasn't done. Later that same night, he shot and killed yet another victim named Tsai Lien Yu. A little over a week later, Ramirez murdered 64-year-old Vincent Zazara and his 44-year-old wife, Maxine. Ramirez began to establish his signature attack style: shoot and kill the husband, then assault and stab the wife. Striking fear in the hearts of people all throughout the state. For months, Ramirez would continue to stalk and murder more victims in California. Unlike some other serial killers who have a type, Richard Ramirez murdered both men and women and preyed on victims both young and old. At first, it seemed like Ramirez was only attacking people near Los Angeles, but he soon claimed a couple of victims near San Francisco as well. And since the press dubbed him the Night Stalker, it was clear that most of his crimes happened at night. Disturbingly, Ramirez would carve pentagrams into his victims' bodies. And in other cases, he would force victims to swear their love for Satan. All over California, people went to bed fearing that the Night Stalker would break into their homes while they slept, and perform an unspeakable ritual of rape, torture, and murder. Since he apparently attacked at random, it truly seemed like no one was safe. The LAPD increased their presence on the street and even created a special task force just to find him. But ultimately, it was Richard Ramirez's own mistakes in August 1985 that led to his capture. After he was spotted outside a witness's home, he accidentally left a footprint behind, and he also left his car and license plate in plain sight. When the police tracked down the vehicle, they were able to find just enough of a fingerprint to make a match. Sure enough, the LAPD was able to identify Richard Ramirez thanks to their new computer database of fingerprints. Authorities soon found Ramirez's mugshots from his prior arrests, and one of his surviving victims came forward with a detailed description that was quite similar to the photos. By the end of August 1985, police decided to release the Night Stalker's image and name. Ramirez was traveling back to Los Angeles when his photo was released. So he didn't realize that he had been tracked down until he was back in the city, and he saw his own face on the newspaper. After his arrest, Ramirez was found guilty of 13 counts of murder. In addition to the murder charges, authorities also found him responsible for committing several rapes, assaults, and burglaries. Ramirez was sentenced to death in the gas chamber for his crimes, and he smiled in response. He was held in San Quentin State Prison for the rest of H's life, but he was never put to death. During this extended delay, Richard Ramirez met a female admirer named Doreen Leoy who had struck up a correspondence with him. And in 1996, he married her while he was on death row. Ultimately, Richard Ramirez died of complications from B-cell lymphoma, a cancer of the lymphatic system, in 2013 while he was 53 years old.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.